My time living in Las Vegas in 2000, 2001, it seems like forever ago, like a totally different life. And I mean, it was 24 years ago now. But yet so much of that time is just imprinted in my memory. So many weird things happened, amazing things happened, life lessons happened. Way back in episode 6, I did kind of an overview of my time living in Las Vegas, which really glossed over a lot of details. And then in episode 9, I told the story of taking a bus from Las Vegas back to Cape Cod. I definitely recommend listening to both of those segments for more fleshing out of my Las Vegas adventures. This segment here is going to be full of laughs and full of probably a lot of you shaking your head and maybe some of you being able to relate to what was happening. It's not an origin story, but it definitely explains a lot of how I am today. When you think of Las Vegas, what's the first thing you think of? Likely casinos, the Strip, gambling. People that say they go to Las Vegas to see shows are typically full of it. They just don't want to say they're going to gamble. That's not everyone, but 8 out of 10 people want to go to gamble. Seeing shows is just a cover for it. I have learned and come to accept in my 40s that I have an addictive personality, hence the reason why I had alcohol issues. But back at the age of 22, which is when most of this takes place, I had no idea about that. I was still figuring out who I was. That's how I ended up in Vegas in the first place. I got bored and felt kind of stifled living on Cape Cod in my early 20s. I know a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people that grew up on the Cape move away at that time. Some come back, some do not. I went to Vegas because I had family out there, and so it was a safe kind of home base. But I was also kind of on my own to do my own thing. I stayed with my father and gave him rent money, but he was never around. He worked a lot. He did his own thing. So I basically lived by myself. My issues with gambling started the very first day, the very first minutes that I stepped foot in Vegas to live, because I visited and got a feel for it and said, I want to move back out here. So I visited in the winter. I moved back in late summer. If you've never been to Las Vegas ever, when you arrive by plane at Harry Reid International Airport, it's a culture shock. Coming from Cape Cod, that even to this day is still pretty rural compared to the rest of the country, and landing at this airport and walking in and there's just bells and whistles and slot machines everywhere. It's both liberating and intimidating at the same time. So I'm walking through the airport with all of my stuff. I think my father and my uncle were there to meet me. I thought it would be fun to kind of set the tone for my life in Las Vegas by throwing some money in the first slot machine I saw. And lo and behold, I won $100. And you may be thinking, oh, wow, that's great. It's terrible if you don't gamble, if you've never gambled and you start to gamble and you win money, because some people think that it's just that easy. You start to think, oh, if I put in 50 cents, I'm going to win 3, 4, 5 times what I put in or more. Well, I guess more than that. That would be like $2. But I mean winning something that's actually worth it. I think at the time I thought of casinos and gambling and slot machines as low risk and almost like another ATM, that if I spent a little money, I'd make more. That was not the case. So I got a job out there working in a Target in the back stock room. That'll be a segment for another podcast episode because that would take a lot of time to explain that experience. In 2000, working in a stock room in Target, I made a whopping $6 an hour. I also was going to college part-time, trying to finish up whatever degree I was trying to get. And in addition to paying my own way, paying rent to my father for the apartment, you could see where I was not exactly swimming in money. I don't think this was right away, but it was pretty much within a month of living in Las Vegas that these occurrences started to happen. Fridays would come, I would get my check at the end of my shift at Target, and I would walk to my bank, which was Washington Mutual. I didn't have a car. I took a bus everywhere or walked everywhere because it was 110, 115 degrees and sunny with no humidity every day. And I would get some supplies for the week, go to the grocery store. The nearest one to where I lived was Albertsons. And for those of you that have never been to Vegas, besides going to the Strip is basically everywhere. You want slot machines, you can find them anywhere. Albertsons had a little alcove of slot machines. 7-Eleven had slot machines. The accessibility of the slot machines for gambling, it's not a bad thing if you have control, self-control. But what I would do is cash my check, go to Albertsons to buy a few things, but you can't get to the aisles without going past the slot machines and the ringing of the bells and the flashing lights. They would just call to me. Like, come on, you know you could make more easy money. Remember the airport? Sometimes I would regain self-control and gamble away 25%, half of my check, and then realize, oh man, I need this money for the rest of the week. Other times I wouldn't. There were times that I would gamble away essentially everything I had just earned for the week. Within half hour of cashing my check, I'd be at Albertsons blowing my money at a slot machine. I mean, if that's not a topic for some kind of after-school special or intervention show, I mean, I don't know what is. In those weeks, I would either live off of peanut butter and jelly, or luckily my father worked in a restaurant, so I would kind of survive on whatever I could during the day, and he would bring dinner home. And this was a regular occurrence. I can't remember a time that I didn't cash my check and at least do a little bit of gambling. I loved this game called Caveman Casino. I was a sucker for the stone wheels and these little eggs that would hatch. If you know the game, you kind of know what I mean. And it was this never-ending hope. Oh, I lost this game. Well, next time I'll win. I'm due. I have to. The interesting thing is, as I'm thinking about my time there were times that I went to casinos with family, father, my uncle, aunt, cousin. We would go there. We went for Thanksgiving, had Thanksgiving dinner at a casino, which was great. Or one of the smaller, quote-unquote, locals-only casinos. And I don't remember really gambling with them. It was almost like we went there and gambling wasn't a part of our lives. It feels like I did it more when I was on my own and I had nothing else to stop me. No one to say, hey, maybe you should save your money. I'm trying to remember if this was in mid-fall, late fall. I had family come to visit from Cape Cod. So my Nana, my Aunt Susan, my Uncle Bob came to visit. In my time at Vegas living there, I had never gone to the Strip. You didn't have to go there to gamble. Like I said, it was in Albertsons. I know they ended up going to the Strip at least once, but as kind of a compromise, they went to this off-strip casino, which was right behind where I worked at Target. It was called the Suncoast Casino, and it was relatively new. I mean, it was way out to where next to it was basically the valley and the mountains and the desert. I didn't have a cell phone. There was no email or easy access to that type of stuff in 2000. So I must have just been told that they would all be going to the Suncoast and to kind of just meet them there. It was a Friday. I cashed my check. You see where this is going. I was still in my uniform, so beige khaki slacks, dress shoes, well, kind of like casual shoes, and my stupid red Target shirt. I took my name tag off and put it in my pocket so I wasn't that stupid looking. And it's about a half a mile walk from Target around the corner from West Charleston Boulevard to South Rampart Boulevard to walk over to the casino. I was excited to see family that I hadn't seen for months. And once I got in there and we all started chatting, I sat down at the roulette table. And we're all playing. I don't know what my experience level was with roulette. It wasn't like I went to big casinos to play. It was slot machines. But I learned on the fly a little bit about chip placement and all this stuff. And before I know it, I have stacks and stacks of chips. I was probably up $3,000 without any skill. I mean, you talk about luck. But this fed into my, oh, it's so easy to win money gambling, that even though I would lose all my money in my checks, I still somehow thought it was true. I can still remember to this day, almost 24 years later, my Uncle Bob looking at me and saying, this table's yours. We're going to go find another one to see if we can win. And if there was a narrator for my life at the time, he would have said, and that's when the mood changed. Slowly, my chips began to fade. I started to lose. But I kept thinking, oh, I'm due. All my chips were gone. I said, hold my spot. I'll be right back. I ran to the ATM machine, not caring about whatever fee they were charging to go along with the money you took out. Grab money, go back, slam it down, give me chips, lose it. This continued for half hour, 45 minutes. Lose, go to the ATM, withdraw money, get chips, repeat. There was even a point where I was still at the table losing, and it might have been my Uncle Eric came over and said somebody had won the Wheel of Fortune prize, the total money there. And he said all the bells went off, and it was an insane moment because I guess nobody wins that, too much. It's like a lottery. You keep putting money in and all the money you lose gets built up. It's just like that, like Powerball. I did not have such luck. We all left. We probably went to dinner. Thankfully, my uncle and aunt likely paid. The next morning I got up. I went walking to the Washington Mutual ATM to withdraw $5 because you could still do that in 2000 to go get breakfast, probably at McDonald's. And it came back insufficient funds. I definitely had not been drinking the night before at the Suncoast, but I still played dumb, like I couldn't understand why I didn't have any money in my account. So I pressed the dreaded check balance button, and it came back that I was overdrawn by about $500. So when you think about it, I was up about $3,000, and I blew all that, and I was overdrawn by $500. It was not a good time. When a few months later the time came for me to come back to Cape Cod, it was kind of out of my hands. It was issues with the apartment and my father that I will leave untouched. But part of me was actually a little bit relieved that I was coming back to a place where gambling wasn't so readily available. Since I moved back to Cape Cod from Las Vegas in 2001, I have never gone to a casino, ever. I even had to be dragged kicking and screaming to do fantasy football at my work, where you put in $50. The only time I ever do scratch tickets for the lottery is if someone buys them for me as a gift, or I use money that I get for recycling my plastic bottles, which I consider that to be found money, and I might use that for scratch tickets. Once a year, maybe I do Powerball if it gets to $1 billion. And people say to me, oh, it's moderation. Just bring a certain amount of money with you to the casino. And I want to explain to them this story that I've just told you. With an addictive personality, I can't just gamble a little. Just like I can't just drink a little. It opens the door and the spiral staircase, I'll just fall down. But luckily, I can look back and laugh because it's unbelievable to think that that was a real part of my life. How many of you out there have gone to Vegas? How many of you have won big or lost big? My time as a degenerate gambler was relatively brief, but definitely a spectacular flameout. And like I said earlier, there'll be more Las Vegas living segments on the podcast coming up. That time at Target working there was something I'll never forget.